If I would be that arrogant, I need to be slapped around. Metaphorically. Right? Don't get any idea. I don't really enjoy being slapped around. I had 2 older brothers. I remember that. We need to let the book of John challenge us. We need to say, this is uncomfortable. I mean, Jesus talking like this? I don't think Jesus talked like this. I'm the vine, you are the branches, on and on and on and on and on and on. Well, there is some reason that John's hearers needed, his listeners needed to hear that. There's some reason that John didn't repeat the parables. There's a reason. There's a reason that John starts with a Greek philosophical idea instead of the birth narratives. There's a reason. There's a reason that he wrote this, the very last chapter. I tell you, turn to John, so now you go to the very last chapter. Okay? And now you're going to think that we're done already. But we're not. In John chapter 21, we have this really interesting conversation between Jesus and Peter after the resurrection that we have no other account of in any other gospel. If we didn't have John, we wouldn't have this. He says, in verse 20, he says, Peter turned and he saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. This was the one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he said, Lord, what about him? And Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. You know what we're talking about here? We're talking about John. Because of this, the rumor spread among the brothers that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say that. He did not say that he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? John has got to deal with a rumor going around. And the rumor was he wasn't going to die until Jesus came back. He said, that's not what he said. I just want to straighten this out. Maybe John saw his death coming. And he didn't want people to be shook up about Jesus not coming back before he died. Maybe that was one of the reasons that he wrote the book that we call the Gospel of John. Well, he didn't want them shook up for that reason, but he wanted them shook up for other reasons. You know, we take the Lord's Supper every Sunday. If you had the book of John, you wouldn't even know. If that's all you had, you wouldn't even know that he instituted the Lord's Supper. All you would know, though, is that he taught them to wash each other's feet. We don't know that except for the book of John. Right? Maybe the Lord's Supper had become kind of a traditional, this is what we do, this is what Jesus said. And John said, you forgot something. You entirely forgot Jesus' attitude of being a servant and his command. My theory is things have changed in John's world. When John wrote this, it was late in the 1st century. Jerusalem was already gone. 70 AD, the Romans came, wiped it out as only the Romans can. Meticulously, thoroughly, completely, until there was not one stone standing on top of another. That's a pretty amazing job. But they did that. They said this is the end of Jerusalem, and they completely leveled it. So what you have in the book of John is you have him referring to places in Jerusalem that don't exist anymore. And he gives specific details, intimate details about where these places are. What this gate was like, what this pool, where this pool was. These places are gone. Jesus has destroyed Jerusalem. Yeah. I said, Jesus destroyed it. He took responsibility for destroying Jerusalem and the temple. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. He used the Romans to do it, but it's gone. The whole Jewish system, the temple, the sacrifices, gone. It's all gone. And now in the book of John, you see some really strange verbiage when he refers to the Jews. And it makes me uncomfortable. And it should make you uncomfortable too. And he does it over and over again. The Jews. The Jews. I think what's going on is the Christian church is trying to rebuild what was destroyed in 70 AD. I think they were moving back to the same kind of thing where they said, oh, we have these apostles, we have these prophets, we have these ministers. And these people forgot what it was like to have that spirit of servanthood that Jesus had. And they had some kind of hierarchical system, and they said, this person is more spiritual than somebody else. This person is more spiritual yet, and we need these people. And Jesus died to destroy that system, folks. He took it all away. And we tend to rebuild it every chance we get. And I think that's why John wrote the book we call the Gospel of John. To remind us some things about Jesus' attitude about religious leaders. To remind us about Jesus' attitude about being a servant and not being somebody that everybody else took care of. To remind us of Jesus' attitude towards his disciples. You know what? All those funny stories that I love that make the disciples look so goofy, they're not in John. They're not there. We have Jesus confronting Peter about taking care of a sheep. I think they needed the book that we call the Gospel of John. I think that we need the book we call the Gospel of John. And I think it's going to make us uncomfortable. And I think it's going to stretch us a little bit as far as our concept of who Jesus was and what his ministry was about and what he cared about and what he didn't care about. So, here's your fair warning. 21 chapters. Run now. Run, run, run. Or stay. Or stay and struggle through it with the rest of us as we try to enlarge our picture of who Jesus is and how much he loves us. As we try to struggle with whether our concepts of our spiritual life match up with what Jesus talks about being born of the Spirit really means. So run or stay. And if you stay, then pray. Pray for me. Pray for the person sitting next to you, in front of you, behind you. That we can be serious about what we learn about in the Gospel of John. Yeah. So that when we do take the Lord's Supper that he didn't even mention, maybe our concepts will be bigger. And maybe our image of Jesus would be a little bit more powerful and a little bit different as we celebrate that together. We're here to minister to each other. We're here because we need each other. We sing an invitation song every week, and this week